let's move on. Let's talk about BYU. All right. Fight Mormons. This is a team that returns a lot. Okay. They are top 35 in returning production. Um, as I said before, Kalai Sitake has been quoted saying he is looking forward to our offense being what we're used to. So I'm pretty excited about that because I think BYU can be a very physical team. Their over under win total doesn't necessarily tell you that. Their over under win total is at 4.5 this year. And, last year I thought that they were going to get really physical because they had a guy like LJ Martin, but really Aiden Robbins was the guy from UNLV who was such a big unit of mass. I'm like, they're just going to run it with this guy. That dude had one touchdown all year. Where is goal line carries? How is this guy not? That guy's like 230, 240 pounds. He was huge. So I'm like, man, what happened? Well, the offense just sucked. And the defense wasn't that good either. In fact, it was not great. I mean, you could argue that the secondary was pretty good, but we'll get to that. All right. The offense. What do you lose? You lose Keaton Slovis. You add Gary Bohannon. Okay. Jake Retzlaff, who has some experience starting. Okay. And then Trayson Bourget, now who we mentioned earlier. So my money's on Jake Retzlaff to be the starting quarterback there. Is that what you're leaning towards, or do you like Gary Bohannon enough?
I like Bohannon if he can get
Okay.
healthy, right? If he's
Yeah.
coming off an injury, right? But what he did at Baylor a couple years ago was pretty nice. And obviously,
A couple years
USF,
ago.
yes, USF did not work out for him, but that was also injury and the reality that Byron Brown's a stud, right? And good for Brown and USF there. But yeah, I like Bohannon here. I don't think they brought him in just to ride the bench, and I think this is one of his last years of
Well, that's what
eligibility, so he's
USF
going to be
did.
all in.
I'm just saying.
We'll
I'm
see.
just saying.
I don't know. I do like them, but like you said, I not that it doesn't really matter, but I do think it it's going to be about running the football. So if you can take care of the football, if you can um, play action pass, if you can do things within the system of the offense, that'd be nice. And that favors a guy like Retzlaff who's been there, who's healthy, that can, have that continuity with that staff and with his receivers. But I do think Bohannon gives them like you're gonna have to make Big Ten throws to win games in the Big 12, right? This year. You're gonna have to come from behind, blah, blah, blah. It's gonna be a competitive conference. So I think Bohannon, to me, is who I'm hoping to see if I'm a BYU fan, because I think he raises your ceiling just a little bit compared to Retzlaff and potentially be the difference in a game or two here or there and be, are we going bowling or not for BYU?
Yeah, I like that. The running back room is pretty solid. LJ Martin's good. I think he's
Yeah.
fine. Um, I think Kinkley Rapati is pretty good. That's a guy who didn't play last year at all because he tore his MCL in the fall camp. And I really thought Aiden Robbins was going to be really good. I think last year we did this, and I was like, "That's the guy," and it didn't work out for me. All right, so uh, I feel okay about that running back room. The receiver room, I actually don't hate, believe it or not. I was going in this thinking that I wasn't gonna like it, but Chase Roberts is pretty good. Um, he's their only receiver that they returned who had 500 yards from last year. But I also think Cody Epps is a good player.
Yeah.
I really do. So, what are your thoughts? Some other thoughts on this offense? Offensive line?
Yeah, I like Lassiter too, and Parker Kingston as well. A young guy, a younger guy, for BYU. It should be good. They bring their top five receivers all back, and that's part of the
Right.
confidence that you have with them, and giving a guy like Bohannon or Retzlaff the ability to take and make throws. Offensive line wise, it was terrible last year, right? It was not good. And I guess part of that's maybe the move to the Big 12. Part of that could be other things. Who knows? Um, but TJ Wood comes in, right? You bring him in as your offensive line coach, hoping to right the ship. Caleb Etienne is back. Braden Kime is back. Connor Pay is back. That's your left tackle. Or, I'm sorry, right tackle, left tackle, and center in that order, respectively, I guess. And from there, it's going to be your guards. And you're bringing a transfer, Austin Louisa, probably going to be playing there right guard for you. We'll see how he does. Going to be adjusting to new um, quality of opponent, right? That pace of play as well. So we'll see how it is. I don't think it can get much worse than last year. I just assume law of averages is going to get a little bit better in terms of these guys getting a year older, right? These are going to be three seniors that you have that are all returning, and maybe that change in the scheme, and maybe also just getting back and having a whole offseason of just committed to running the football has got to fire up an offensive line, right? Has got to fire up an offensive line to
Yeah.
just be able to, 45, 40, maybe 35, 45 times a game, you're going to be firing off the football. And you know what you're going to be able to do for most of the plays of your season.
Yeah, I like the continuity there, like you said. We'll see. I really like Connor Pay. Not because I think he's like an like really incredible football player, but um SMC media day or not SMC Big 12 media days, he was pretty awesome. He's also got sick flow. He's really good with the microphone. He's got good interviews. I would recommend anyone listen to him talk. But yeah, and then I look at this defensively, and Kalani Sitake has explicitly said multiple times that Jay Hill is the guy, that he is the most, that he is the smartest person that he's been around, to summarize, essentially. And this BYU defense struggled a lot last year. Okay. You get some guys back on the defensive line, like Tyler Batty, who led the team in sacks, of course, but you need some guys to step up there, right? You have to have it. You have to have it. I do think they were a pretty disciplined team. Uh, in general, and the BYU fans might not think this, but they were like in the top quarter in college football in terms of like penalties against, so or penalties for. So they actually were pretty well disciplined. Punting the ball, Ryan Recco was a monster. He was a second team All Big 12 guy. He was third in the country in punting average. He's gone. His brother's there. I don't know if he's as good, but that is a factor, I think, when you talk about defense and you have a really good punter and your defense is still bad, uh, it's a problem. It's a problem. It becomes more of a problem if your punter is not as good as he was.
I do think they had a couple of injuries that set them back last year, especially in the secondary. But going off of the D line there, you mentioned Batty. I really like him as well. John Nelson is a guy I wanted to bring up interiorly. Um, Probably your best defensive lineman, or at least interior defensive lineman. He's got to stay healthy as well. He's a senior coming back, which is awesome. And I do see a theme of your front guys, a lot of upperclassmen, a lot of old veteran guys for you at BYU, which is similar to the offensive line, right? That's a good thing. That's a really, really good thing to try to, not fix the defense, which I guess was fine in some games last year, but, help it be a strength of your team, especially if you're maybe worried about the O line. How is it going to look if we got quarterback worries potentially there? Yeah, I don't know. I think their defensive end group in general just has more talent than last year. Um, so it should be pretty good, or at least hopefully better than next year. Moving on to linebackers, right? You lose a couple pretty darn good guys, right? Max Tooley, AJV, which is tough. But I do think this group as a whole is pretty still darn freaking good. I like them a lot. Jack Kelly from Weber State, he's a guy, familiarity. You talked about Jay Hill, familiarity with him all the way back to Weber State there. I mean, Hill was obviously not obviously, but he was head coach at Weber State for about 8, 9 years there from 2014 to 2022. So a little overlap there, which you love, that continuity with those transfers. And
Yeah,
Ben Bywater.
I thought Jack Kelly was a good yet. I think he's a good player.
Yeah. Ben Bywater. I like him a lot. Um, Harrison Taggart. right? Young kid, sophomore, redshirt sophomore. We like that as well. You got a couple guys injuring, but I do think the group is deep, and I think there's talent behind the top end there, which is always good, pushing those starters for reps and whatnot.
Yeah. Let's go to the secondary. I thought the secondary, dare I say, was okay last year, but you
Even through the
lose
injuries.
even through the injuries, but you lose a ton of snaps at that cornerback spot, right?
Yeah,
You get Jacob Robinson back, which
good.
is huge, right? But no Eddie Heckard, no Camden Garrett. We'll see how this group is. And they did go get is that Mark Collins? Is that how you pronounce that? Mark Collins, from Weber State, as you know, their transfer that they brought in that cornerback room, who I don't know if he'll start. I mean, my guess is he's familiar with that J Hill defense because he's a redshirt senior. So I believe he was with J Hill back in that when J Hill was over there.
Yeah.
So
I think at least if he's
my
not
guess is
playing
that he
opposite
starts.
Robinson, if he's not playing opposite Robinson, I think they can put him in the slot too, which is nice. Some versatility there, um,
Yeah. Or is
along with
that
Micah Harper and whatnot.
right? Exactly. So I don't know. I think they got a lot of I still think they got a lot of pieces that I think they're gonna have to fiddle around with in this fall camp to figure out what is their best option going forward. And yeah, I guess it starts with Jacob Robinson, you know. So we'll hopefully hopefully we see some improvement, man. I really like BYU as a program. I like Satake and what he does. I think the Big 12 will be better. That rivalry, that BYU Utah rivalry, like you want to talk about big time rivalries in the Big 12 with Texas and Oklahoma gone. I think BYU Utah having that one just be a significant rivalry again
Hmm.
requires BYU coming back and being very good. I think they can. They've shown that they can perform at a high level and compete with the big dogs. I know they can. You know, they just
Yeah,
need more 60-year guys, more
eighth year
COVID
with the mission
years.
trips, right? I
Yeah.
do think um, just to touch up on that secondary as well, the being a strength of your team in that cornerback room, Thierry and Alexander, that's a true freshman that they are pretty darn high on, and they think he can potentially play right away and help him, which would be awesome opposite a guy like Jacob Robinson, pushing a guy like Marcus McKenzie or Maury Bamba to at least elevate their game and figure out from their safety position, right? Talon Alfrey returns. He was hurt last year. Ethan Slade's a guy that played pretty well last year. Raider DeMooney is a guy that returns as well, a young, talented kid. And then Faleta Salulala. Wow, I just butchered that. But
Satula.
Satula, thank you. He's a gem of their recruiting class. He's a high 4-star, a guy they cannot wait to get on campus. Um, and so again, adding to the depth and versatility of that room can give you things in your secondary. And yes, you're going to need pressure up front, right? You're going to need your linebackers to step up. But I do really like, in terms of comparing to last year, or I guess some other teams in the Big 12, this defense could be a lot worse. And I do think th- yeah, it's not too bad at all.
Well, I want to talk about
And
their schedule. Is that right? Can I move on?
yeah,
It's brutal. It's brutal.
why are you
So
going to Laramie? Why are you going to Laramie?
and to SMU. I know the whole Power Five thing is pretty recent, but well, I guess SMU is Power Five now too. But I mean,
But
just
when you
what do we do?
schedule
It's
that,
Southern
yeah.
Illinois at home, at SMU, at Wyoming. Then you get Kansas State at home. You go to Baylor, which is like a winnable game, but you got to go to Waco. Okay, bye. Arizona at home, Oklahoma State at home, UCF on the road. Bye. You go to Rice Eccles, in Utah, which is a rivalry. That's gonna be awesome. Kansas at home, at Arizona State, and Houston at home. Like every like winnable game, right? Besides Houston, Like every game that I'm looking at, I'm like, all right, they got a chance to win that game. It's on the road. Every single one. Every
Does
single
not bode
one.
well. Does
That is why that win total is at 4.5. Like, and it's juiced to the under. And you know what? And like, it's a sin to do this, especially in the Big 12, to like just take unders right on teams that have low win totals and take overs on teams with high win totals because you know that it's actually going to be the opposite. But this is a team that I cannot, in good conscience, take the over for. Like, I understand they're trying to change the dynamic of their offensive identity a little bit, but Jake Retzlaff is not doing it for me. The offensive line, I think, will be better. The defense, it's not really doing it for me either. And the schedule is brutal. Like your winnable games, Houston at home. We'll just call that a win. Okay. At Arizona State, man. At Arizona State. Baylor, a winnable game. At Baylor. Southern Illinois. You get it. Thankfully, get that game at home. Like, what's next? You're going to, um, oh, what's it called? Starts with a C. Whatever. The city that's in. At SMU. At Laramie. Dude. We were talking about before, like, thank God Arizona State doesn't have to go to Laramie, but BYU does. That is not an easy place to play at all. So I'm not very confident. I will not be betting under 4.5. That'd be ludicrous. Um, but I don't know if it's ludicrous, but I just in terms of picking over under win total 4.5, I think my expectations for BYU are to go 4-8 with wins against Houston, with a win against Baylor, with a win against Southern Illinois, and then maybe a win at Arizona State. Wyoming,
yeah.
maybe.
That the at Wyoming is brutal. I do think they're a team that's uniquely equipped to be okay there, right?
Because
I think
they already have the altitude there in Provo.
yeah. And they run the football, or they're at least attempting to run the football this year,
You're
which
right,
obviously bodes
absolutely.
well. But yeah, you said it. This schedule is brutal. The home and away split is a big deal in the Big 12. It is a big deal. And BYU last year kind of struggled on the road, other than a nice win at Arkansas, right? Other than that, I mean, TCU got blown out, West Virginia got blown out, Oklahoma State, you lost, you blew that game. It's not easy pickings going on the road in the Big 12, and they understand that now after 2023. It's brutal. I mean, also, what's that? 6 road games, right? 6 road games, or yeah, 6 road games is brutal. I'm with you here on the under. As much as it pains me to say, I do think this team gets better from a year ago, but the schedule does not work out. Now, if you can beat Wyoming, right, and maybe you steal one at Baylor and you're 3-2 going into your bye week, you got a chance to put some momentum together for the back half of the season, which would be awesome. But I do think you got to run into that middle stretch is brutal, right? And then you could get some breathing room there. Week 13, week 14, two teams that are probably towards the bottom of the Big 12.
But
But
after you've gone through your schedule,
now you do have more depth this year, I think, than you did last year, which is
Yep,
nice because last year you were not quite built to play um, in the
in the
Big
Big
12, which is
12.
fair. I mean, though the Houston, Cincinnati, they were not either. UCF struggled as well. So yeah, I unfortunately the under here for BYU.